Hey everyone, thank you for joining us at Show Up to Win. I have an exciting guest. As everyone knows, and I've told you all about my mentor being Melvin Turner Sr., he was mentored by Jim Rohn, and so I'm part of this Jim Rohn mentor tree. And so this next guy, he has worked closely with Jim, and I feel like Jim Rohn was one of the, I feel still he is the greatest motivational speaker. Um, it's kind of funny how things are. Sometimes you just don't realize who you know and who knows certain people. Well, so my guest is going to be Jim Britt. I actually read his book probably about 15 years ago when I was reading some other books, and so I'm just extremely excited to be able to share uh, his story. Have him on my platform is just incredible, and so let me get him on stage. Hey Jim, thank you for coming to Show Up to Win.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And so Jim, I know I know a little bit about you, but I don't. We don't know each other that well. You're probably one of the few guests that I don't have a lot of background on, but I am aware of who you are. Um, could you just kind of introduce yourself, give a little bit of a timeline, and then let's kind of take it from there?
Of course, yeah. Well, I've been a professional speaker for 45 years. Presented over 5,000 events in 31 countries, and a couple million people have attended my events, all the way from 3-day retreats with 20, 30 people in it to convention centers with 15,000 people. I started coaching people about 40 years ago. And my background, I got involved in the speaking business as a result of Jim Rohn. I joined up years back in a direct sales company, um, one of my early 20s, and did pretty well in that the second year. And then uh, Jim Rohn was a trainer in that company, so that's where I met Jim. And nobody really knew who he was outside of that company. But later we formed up in business together, and I started promoting Jim. And we were, we had, I think, 14 offices and around California and Arizona, and we made Jim pretty famous, especially in those areas. And later, we're probably 8 years into it, and Jim had an offer from Herbalife to go travel the world doing training, and he chose that. And so I kind of went off in my own direction and changed a few things I was doing. And so, you know, that's where it brought me where I am today.
Right, absolutely. So again, I want to say thank you for showing up on this show. And so I know some depth background stuff because I've done a little bit. I've done some research. I know you're from Oklahoma. What would that kid from Oklahoma be thinking about the life that you're living right now?
Well, I was thinking about that just the other day because my first six years of life, we didn't have electricity even. We lived in kind of the backwoods of Oklahoma, kind of moved around a lot too. But, I didn't know we didn't have electricity because we never had it. So we, the first couple of years of life, I lived in or the family, not just me, but the family lived in an abandoned boxcar um, with no electricity and no running water, no heat. I don't know exactly how we lived. I just remember being in the boxcar when I was 2 years old. I have a picture of it. I didn't know I had a picture until my sister shared it with me, and it turns out she had a picture of it with me in there. So that was my beginning, and I dropped out of high school about halfway through the 10th grade, and didn't really have any direction in life. I think I had a lot of ambition, but I didn't know where to direct it. Um, and I went to work pumping gas right after I dropped out of school. Got married at 18 years old, had my first child at 19, and and then I got my dream job, which was working in a factory on the assembly line. I was wiring telephone switchboards. So if you ever got a wrong number back then, it was probably my fault. But that's it turned out it wasn't my dream job. I'd been probably been there for maybe 3 years, something like that. And I got introduced to a direct sales company. And I'd say my first year, it was pretty interesting. Um, they told me if I talked to a lot of people, I'd make a lot of money. I said, well, how much is a lot? And they said 10 a day. And back then there was no internet or anything. So 10 a day, you had to go out and find 10 people a day. But by the end of the first year, I had lost everything I owned, lost both my cars. My home was already been foreclosed. I had 5 days from living on the street. I talked to 10 people every day for a year. I made one sale. And only other thing I got good at selling is I sold my boat, uh, my pickup, my camper, my fishing equipment, my guns, uh, everything that had any value, both sentimental value and real value that I could get money out of, I sold. And that was to buy food and keep the power on, I guess. And so the end of the first year, I'm standing in my kitchen, looking out the window. I've got a wife and a child. I've got 15 cents in my pocket and no food in the house. And so I didn't know what to do. I mean, I didn't know whether to, I actually didn't know what to do because
Right.
I had no transportation. I thought about going back to the factory and getting my old job back. And I said, no, I'm not going back. And stood there for about 15 minutes. And finally, I've just said, I'm not going to quit. Now, when I look back on that, I'd probably say, yeah, you're pretty stupid. You've gone a year and you've made one sale. Why are you continuing with this? And, but I did. And what I did is I needed food for the family. So I picked up a 5 gallon container of carpet shampoo and I walked 3 miles in the Oklahoma heat to the one customer I sold that year. And he was a big builder in Oklahoma City, the largest, I think. And I worked for him during the summer a couple of times. Uh, I knew all the trades of building because we built a home during high school during the ninth grade before I dropped out. And so I was pretty smart. I'd find things that contractors missed or didn't do or they did wrong. And he thought I was pretty sharp. So anyway, I carried that 5 gallons of carpet shampoo, hoping I could sell it for about 20 bucks. And I knew if I didn't sell it, I was going to give it to him because I was going to haul it back carrying it. And so I walked about 3 miles, and sure enough, he bought it. And he and his brother said, "Can we have a conversation with you?" And I said, "Of course." And so I go into their office, and he said, "We've been thinking a lot about you." He said, "We'd like to offer you an opportunity." And I said, "Well, I don't have any money to invest in an opportunity." And he said, "No, no, we're going to invest in you." He said, "We
Right.
like you. We think you're smart. We trust you." He said, "You've saved me a lot of money the summers that you've worked for me." And he said, "We'd like to offer you an opportunity. We want to build this 52-unit apartment complex." And he said, "We'd like you to build it." I said, "Well, what does that mean, me to build it?" And he said, "Well, we want to give you the plans. Uh, Permits are already drawn. That we've got the property. All of that stuff is done. It's ready to go. We just need to start construction." And he said, "We'd like for you to handle the whole thing." And he said, I said, "Well, how does that work?" And he said, "What I really meant was, how do I get paid?" And he said,
Right.
"Well, we'll start you out with 300 bucks a week." And my mind is already saying, "I'm in," whatever that is.
Right.
A
Right.
car to drive. We'll buy you a new car, and we'll furnish you a 3 bedroom apartment, fully furnished, if you want it, which is everything I needed. I lost my home. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any money, and they provided me everything. And
Isn't that amazing? Is it, Jim? Isn't that amazing that the time which you're looking for something, God just provides it. Like
yeah,
God, universe, whatever. Like you're just like, but you did the work, man. You carried the bucket, right? And
yeah.
I'm sure that 3 mile truck was not fun. I mean, and that you were probably like all kinds of limiting beliefs and stuff like that. So I'm just
Oh, I sat down multiple times. One time I sat down and just cried for like 5 minutes and because I didn't know what to do and I'm going, this is stupid and why am I doing this and all that.
right.
But what they offered me and over and above that, they said it typically would take about 14 months to build this. And he said, if you build it in 14 months, you've made, $300 a week for 14 months. And he said, maybe we'll do another project. And he said, but if you build it in 12 months, he said, we'll pay you a $60,000 bonus. And I mean, I'd never even heard that kind of number before. $60,000 bonus. And he said, but every day you go past 12 months, we're going to take 1,000 away from that. So if you go all the way to 14 months, no bonus. 5 days from that, you got a $5,000 bonus. And he said, but not likely you're going to build it in 12 months. And he said, maybe 13, maybe 13 and a half or whatever. But he said, if you do in 12, you got the bonus. He said, and every day you finish before 12 months, we'll add another 1,000 a day. And I didn't know what that meant because I didn't know what it was going to take for me to build that because I'd never actually built a two-story apartment complex or, didn't really, I kind of knew that you put the foundation in first before you put the roof on. But I knew the trades. And so they gave me the plans. I went home. I'm looking through the plans and I drove a car home too, a temporary. They're going to order me a new one. And they said, we got a pickup out there. If you want to drive that, you're welcome to. And we'll go out to the property in the morning and so on. Um, so I took the plans home and they listed all the contractors. They had a cement finisher, a framer, a roofer, and so on, plumber. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, there's 8 buildings on this property. And there's only one contractor for cement finishing, only one contractor for plumbing, and one for roofing or whatever. And I said, I think I'm going to get a contractor for each building.
Love it.
So I did. And long story short, I built it in 8 months.
I love it, man. I
And
love it. I mean,
I ended up with ownership in it too. If I built it in less than a year, a percentage
oh
of
wow,
ownership. And we did more projects after that as well. But
absolutely.
that was a pretty interesting learning experience, and 8 months of pretty intense um, work, mental, emotional, physical um, stress. Because working with contractors, and and I had 8 contractors running everywhere, and you know, I, I'd never done that before,
Right.
so I was the guy at the top, and there I'm a young man, and then all these guys. It was stressful, but I made a lot of money doing it. And somebody showed up from the direct sales company that same day when I took the 5 gallons. Within a 24-hour period, somebody showed up, taught me what I needed to quit doing and what I needed to start doing, and that business took off like a rocket. So on the side, between both of those businesses, I made myself close to $1 million in the next 12 months.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah,
So that's amazing. But like Jim, so one of the things that like I like to ask is that between that 1 and 8 year range, right? There's usually something where you found out like, hey, I want to be like an entrepreneur. So for me, my family has a small business. So I was always learning from my mom and my dad from how to treat customers and things like that. But also I sold baseball cards too. So it was like I wanted to own something, right?
yeah.
Was there a piece of the puzzle for you, like when you were between 1 and 8, that you can think of that was like, hey, I want to be able to do this? Because I know you were talking about having just humble beginnings, not having electricity and certain things like that. But like, where was the part where Jim started dreaming? Hey, I want a car. I want, and I know when you went to the factory, you also didn't want to just stay there. You didn't want to go back. Is my point. There was something
Well, the
there that
thing
was just like just driving you.
the thing is, before the fact, or before even pumping gas, when I was 6 years old, um, we started picking cotton, and I picked
Okay.
cotton until I was 12. The whole family did. We had to have money to food for food. And one shift made for me was when I was about 6, and we moved into a home in town that had electricity and running water and a bathroom inside the house. And it had heat and all of that stuff. And um, I remember at 6 years old when we moved in, I'd flush the toilet just to see the water go down. And I'm looking around and I think I'm in heaven, or something. I thought, when I grow up, I'm never going to be without this. Never. So right then I kind of had that spark of I want to have something in my life. I don't want to grow up with nothing. I didn't know what that was. I had no idea. I had no ambition for doing a certain thing. But when I picked cotton, I always tried to do better the next day, not to beat anybody else, but to beat me. And I almost always did. When I worked at the gas station, I thought I was the best gas station attendant in the whole world. And to me, I was. I mean, I prided myself. I could lube, change oil, and filter in a car in less than 5 minutes.
Oh wow.
And it was amazing. I mean, I'd get them on the rack, and as the rack's going up, I'd pull the plug or on the oil plug, and before it even gets to the top, I was doing the lube job, and the oil had already drained out. Pull off the filter, put the new filter on, start the thing back down, and I'm pouring oil in before the car even hits the ground. And
Oh
people
wow.
would, okay, did you actually do that? But I did it every single time like that. I just wanted to see how
So,
fast I could do stuff.
so you had the
And when I
drive. You had the drive. Sorry. You, so you had the drive and the mindset to like push yourself, find
Yeah,
out that limit because you were like, I want to see how much better I can get. This makes a lot of sense now when you say, hey, how you were like, what if I could do this with having all these contractors? Uh,
well, when I was in the factory, um, I wired telephone switchboards, and it was a lot of wiring connections. You had these little screw guns that wrapped wire around terminals, and they give you a certain job to do and a certain amount of time to do that job. And if you did it at the time they allocated, you ran 100%. If you got below 85, they could fire you. If you got above 100%, you got a little bonus. It was like a bonus pool that everybody got the same amount, even if you did twice as much as somebody else. But at least I got in the pool, which wasn't much. It was a few bucks a week, but at least it meant something. It was sometimes $10, which back then you could almost feed a family of three for a week for $10, 15 at least. Um, so my best month, I ran 457%. So I did the work of 4.57 people.
wow.
And and I took breaks when I wasn't supposed to. I'd go to the cafeteria and have coffee when my supervisor would catch me and say, "You can't do this when it's not a break." And I said, "Okay, I'll just run 100%." He said, "Okay, just don't tell anybody you came down here." So I was kind of a rebel, but man, I was fast, uh, and I got paid a little bit more, but not that much. I just wanted to beat what I'd done before, and I learned to memorize the blueprints and the wire ends. In fact, I was on the back of my home here. We had 6 lines coming into my home when all of our boys were here, and I was back there a while back, and we had trouble with a line, and he was repairing it. And I stood standing behind him, and I said, "I'll bet you that I can name all of the colors of those wires without even looking." And he said, "No way." I said, "Yeah, well, there's 6 basic colors: blue, orange, green, brown, slate, white." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, then you got blue one white, which is a white dot on it. Then you got a blue two white, which is 2 dots together. Then you got a blue three white, which is 3 dots together. And then you got the same blue, orange, green with those same dots on it. And he goes, "Wow, how did you learn that? Did you work for AT&T?" I said, "No, I wired telephone switchboards, and you're still using the same wiring that you used back then." So,
Oh wow.
uh, but you know, I think when you're looking back on my life, when you're being the best that you know how to be, not the best over and above everybody else, but the best you can be, opportunities show up for you. If you hate your job, like the guy I worked with at the gas station, he walked around all day long. "I hate this job. I'm getting out of here one day, and I don't want to do this. It's raining out there. Don't they know it's cold? How come they're coming for gas while it's raining?" I said, "Well, they're out of gas." But he was complaining all the time. And I went back there, that little town I lived in Oklahoma, probably 20, 25 years later. And I thought, I'll go down and get some gas where I used to work. Same guy working there. Same
The
guy,
same guy?
25 years later. Same guy that
So
worked with me.
so let me ask you, Jim. Do you think that like I mean, because I know I'm a big law of attraction, so I assume you know, when you start looking at these things and you were applying them and you didn't realize that you even were applying them, I assume at that point, is there any
Yeah,
more things that you were applying?
I think no, I didn't know what I was applying. I had no idea. I just tried to be the best I could. But you mentioned law of attraction. Um, I don't look at the law of attraction the way most people do.
Okay.
Personally, I don't think you attract things into your life. I think you create them based upon the mindset that you have. Because if you haven't made a decision to do a certain thing that's firm, that nothing less than that will do, then you're not going to see that show up in your viewpoint. If you don't want to be a millionaire, why would you see opportunities? You wouldn't even look for them. They may be all around you. There's opportunities. If you look around this room, there's probably 50 things in this room that somebody's made millions of dollars creating. I don't care if it's his microphone or the computer or mouse or whatever it is, it's everywhere.
Right.
But if you're down and out mentally, you never see those things because you don't look for them. So I think we're built to create. It kind of feels like we attracted it, but it was there all the time. We just didn't see it. So I
Okay.
think we operate from the law of creation, in my point of view. And I'm not
I
one to
love it.
plan ahead. I never plan doing what I'm doing now. I don't set goals. I don't write things down. I make decisions and get on with it. And and decision really, if a decision was a complete circle, which it should be, a commitment, not 99, not 110. Somebody tells me I'm 110% committed. That's a red flag for me because there is no 110%. There's just commitment or not.
I
So
completely
if
agree.
you've got that circle and that's a full commitment, most people leave a little opening in that circle, and that's their escape route. Just in case it doesn't work out, they've got an excuse. Well, it
Yep.
was
That
raining, I
safety
couldn't
net.
make sales, or whatever.
Right.
It's uh, but man, the decision is the foundation for everything. It's not the goal. You can write a goal down, but a goal is something in the future. It's not present. You can't have that goal in the present. You can have it in the present sometime in the future if you make a decision in the present to have it in the future. But if you haven't made the decision, it's just a waste of time to put up a vision board and all that kind of stuff if you haven't firmly made the decision. You want to be a millionaire or whatever, a 10 millionaire today. um, you got to make that decision and you've got to feel that way before it happens. You've got to own it before it happens. And and then you got to take action. There's so many people in this world they think they've made the decision, some have, but then now they're getting ready to get going. And there's something that you could do today to get going on anything, any type of entrepreneurial project. There's something you could do right now. But so many people, because they're so afraid it's not going to work, that they want to get organized first. They want to make sure that they've got every little part in place. But while they're trying to put all those little parts in place, somebody else is off doing this opportunity that you could have taken advantage of. And
Right.
so, we distract ourselves by it's like we make up something that we want to accomplish in life, and then we turn around and make up something to keep us from it, make up a fear to
Right.
keep us from it.
It's a
And
so it's where we create that limiting belief. I mean, so I believe that we have these limiting beliefs, right? But there's this part of this where we have these limiting beliefs where we're like, I don't really want to do this, but I want I want that opportunity. So they're never all in. So the action they do is just to try. It's just to say I tried. It would be the same because like with me playing basketball, if I just grabbed a basketball and I just threw it over my shoulder, I'm going to miss it 100%, right? But if I looked over my back and I was like thinking, oh, okay, it's like this far, like that's actually an attempt. Huge difference. Like where a lot of people they just like they flip it and they just think, oh, that's no big deal. Like and they think that it's like an accomplishment of I tried. I don't even try. You whenever I say the word try, I take that word back and say attempt because I want to make sure that I'm keeping myself accountable through it. And so a lot of the things that you're saying is extremely part of my mindset. So a lot of this stuff is like I haven't heard someone explain it like this. So that's what I was going to say. It's like me and you are on that same path, a lot of things. Maybe the law of attraction might be different because you're saying law of creation, but we're co-creators. We're supposed to
Well,
create.
if you look at words and really catch the meaning behind them, try actually is defined as to struggle. Um, Hope is to entertain an outcome. Belief is to have an opinion. Um, Knowing is to feel certain. But all beliefs are false. They're not
Right.
true until you decide they're true. Then they're only true for you. And they may not be true, even though they're true for you. And people will fight to the death to prove to themselves and the outside world that what they believe is true.
Right.
I had a person, a couple over for dinner one night a couple of years ago, and we were chatting and after dinner, and he brought up beliefs about something, and I said, "Well, all beliefs are false." And she said, "No, they're not." And I said, "Yes, all of them are false until you decide they're true. Then they're only true for you." And she said, "No, that's not true." She said, "All beliefs are not false." I said, "Well, name one that's not." She said, "Jesus Christ is my Savior." I said, "Prove it." And I waited and waited. And I said, "Now look, I'm not saying you don't want to believe that." I said that's your prerogative. You can believe that because that's you have faith that backs that up. But I said some people believe something else is true or something else they're going to do is true. And you have to have faith even if you want to create an outcome of any kind, you want to have faith. So you have to believe something in order to develop that faith to follow through with it, whether it's business, personal, or whatever it might be. But what stops people? I'll tell you where people, well, most people don't know this. Um, I'd say most, most everybody, where limited beliefs come from. You know, when you're born, you start getting programmed. As a child, your parents teach you to walk and talk and say your numbers and how to swim and how to cross the street, and how to put your clothes on and keep your hand out of fire or whatever. And as you repeat those things over and over and over, you finally perfect them. And then once perfected, they become a habit pattern that's second nature to you that you never have to think about again. Once you learn to walk, you don't think about walking unless you're injured or something you have to relearn. But like getting your car to drive it, you've been programmed to drive that car. It's built into your brain, the mechanics of that car, how to drive it. All you have to do is be aware of your surroundings. Um, you don't consciously think that I've got to hit the brakes or I've got to hit the gas. It's just intuitive. I mean, it's there. So I thought about that for a while, and I thought we may have hundreds of those habit patterns. But does that really make us different as humans? Then I thought, what does a child want the first 6 years of life? Because I'm trying to figure out that 80-20 rule. You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
What's
Go ahead and
wrong with
explain.
the 80%? How come they don't follow through? How come they don't do what they say they're going to do? How come they make up excuses? How come they spend the money and go to events and go on weight loss programs and go to the gym and get healthy and then drop out and quit and not use it? Why? It's puzzling. Why even
It's
go to the
puzzling.
trouble?
It's
So I
puzzling.
said,
It's the
okay,
choice
what does a
decision.
child want during that first 6 years? They have no responsibilities. Came up with four things. They want to be happy, they want to have fun, they want to learn new things, and they want to be loved. Same thing that you and I want right now. We just have taken on responsibilities and rent and payments and what have you, that we all as an adult have responsibilities. But the child didn't have any. So I thought, okay, if they want those four things, what happens if something negative happens to that child? Some get abandoned, grow up in orphanages and foster homes. Some are abused verbally, physically, sexually. Some grow up in a household with an alcoholic or maybe a parent that abuses the other parent. I mean, all kinds of things happen. What does that child do with that experience? Thought about that for a while, and I thought they learn to suppress it. And as soon as they suppress it, they're a little less happy. And the more they experience that, and the more they suppress, the less happy they become. And eventually that child is just not very happy. And they carry that right into adulthood. You see it in some people. Uh, some people are, struggle financially all their life. Some people, they don't love themselves because they don't think they're worthy of it because they didn't get love growing up. So then now they end up in a whole chain of little short-term relationships because they don't think they're not worthy of long term. Nobody's going to love me that long. Or they may end up as an abuse victim in an abusive relationship, as an extreme case. And you look at all of that, and it affects every area of your life. I heard a woman once. I was at a really fine hotel. I remember the name of it, up in Seattle area, I think. And this woman it was a Four Seasons. This woman was singing. I went in for a glass of wine before dinner, about 8 o'clock, and she was singing, and there was only five people in there, and she had the most incredible voice I'd ever heard in my entire life, bar none. I don't care who you brought up. I couldn't imagine anybody singing better than this woman did. And then she took a break, and when she did, she walked by me, and I said, "Excuse me for a minute." I said, "I just have to say that you've got the most incredible voice that I have ever heard, period." "Oh, I don't really think it's that good." I said, "Oh, yes, it is really that good." I said, "You should be in front of 10,000 people, not five people." "Oh, I'm not really that good." Well, see, she developed a skill set that she's very good at, but she doesn't have the confidence to take it to the next level because every decision you make gets filtered through that core belief that you developed when you were 6 years old.
It's
Every
crazy.
decision, and you're off track before you even know it because most people never look back at that first 6 years of life. But when you
Yeah,
heal the child, the adult will appear. And
right. The inner
until
child
then,
work.
part of that child is still in you that's looking for a way out, looking for a way back.
Yeah. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. For me, when I started doing the inner child work, that really helped me. Um, Especially dealing with the lost time that I was dealing with. I was like, I just went back to that period and was like, what made me happy, but also like, what kind of things did Dwayne want to do at that age?
Mhm.
Like what it like I wanted to write a book. I mean, so as you know, I wrote a book. I mean, there's just these different things. I was like, oh, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna attempt at these things for real and just see where all these things are landing. And they've been landing, Jim. That's the other thing is like, I've been manifesting a whole lot of stuff, creating, but also I am very open to everything. I am open. I'm like I'm in the presence of all the time. I'm like I'm not showing up with expectations. The I think the part that most people don't get right is they feel they have to learn without consequences. And those learn with when you learn something and it doesn't go your way, that's just a lesson. It's not it doesn't mean that you're not capable. So like that lady singing who had the greatest voice you've heard, maybe she sang in front of 500 people and she stunk up the joint. Like there was a lesson that she didn't learn for that to get better at whatever for her singing career.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
feel like there's so many people that are like that.
Well, you're kind of blinded though by your past if you don't dig into it, and most people never do because they don't know to go there. They don't know that's when it was created, but it was for all of us, and we all have some form of limiting beliefs in some way about our life that stems from there. Um, some more devastating than others. Some are simple. But you look at somebody that's a billionaire and you think, boy, they got their life together. Yeah, making money, yeah. But what about the rest of it? You start
There's a
digging in
part.
and say,
There's a
they've been married
Yep.
5 times and this and that. Can't keep a relationship together and so on. But yeah, it's interesting. I made a decision in 1996 to write my first book. was my story. And prior to that, for 10 years, I told myself, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. 10 years. I mean, over and over and over. And finally, one day, I made the decision. And I knew it didn't allow for turning back. I get to my hotel room 15 minutes later, and I'm going, well, how am I going to do this? I don't know how to write. I dropped out of school. English was my worst subject. I don't know how to write. I can't even type. My fingers never been on a keyboard. I don't know how would I write a book? I don't even have a computer. And so all these things are going through my mind, and I thought, no, I'm going to do it. And I didn't know exactly how until the next day. And I hired somebody, and I talked, and she typed for 5 weeks. And then she forced me. She said, "Okay, now that we're pretty much done with the beginning of this, we've got to edit back and forth." And she was in Hawaii, so I had to come back to the States and she or to the mainland, and she said, "I'll send you stuff through email." And I said, "I don't have email." She said, "Well, you got to get it." I said, "I don't have a computer." She said, "You got to get one." I said, "I don't know how to type." She said, "You got two fingers?" I said, "Yep." She said, "Look for the A's on my computer." And she said, "You see the A?" And I looked around and finally I said, "Oh yeah, I do. Put your finger on it." She said, "Do that same thing with a B and a C and all that stuff." And she said, "Learn to type." And I did. And after that book was finished, I wrote my next book, which was 330 pages in 30 days.
Wow,
Uh,
330 pages in 30 days?
in 30 days, I wrote 10 pages a
Man.
day, and with almost no edits. I mean, it was the publisher said, "Yeah, it's almost flawless." And I've written 15 books now, and I've got two more underway.
That's awesome.
And then I've got a series. That one's in its 18th volume of a collaborative type book with 20 co-authors in each one, endorsed by Tony
Right.
Robbins and a lot of other things that go with it. But it's like once you do something, you know how to do it. But it's getting up to that point to getting it done is really the critical thing. And so there's I have a program called The Power of Letting Go. And there's real power in letting go. And that's the problem most people have. You mentioned you fail at something, you learn from it. Well, not if you don't let go of that failure, you don't learn anything from it because that's the key. Something doesn't work, let it go and move on. If it's something beyond your control, let it go and move on. If there's something you can do about it, take action, get it done, and move on. And that's the mentality we need because so many people just hang on to stuff forever. And when you're hanging on, you have no capacity for new things to come in. If you're hanging on to all your past failures, you have no capacity for success. If you're
Right.
hanging on to being poverty stricken or lack of money or whatever, you have no capacity to create more. You just keep
Right, because
struggling the way you're
you
struggling.
have two hands. So if you're holding something, you can't pick something else up because you're holding this. It's very common sense. For me, is like I always look at for very simple things in very common sense. And I know a lot of people struggle with common sense, and I'm like, I don't understand how you cannot understand some of the most common principles just because you're trying to complex them. I think that's one of the things with our society is we try to make everything really complex. We don't need to do that. And so when you said that, it's just I feel second nature. If I threw you a ball, you caught it, you couldn't catch another one. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things.
I mean, it's like having a dial we used to have a dial on the old TV sets where you could adjust the contrast and keep it tuned in where you could see it more clearly, and you got the volume and you got the channel knob. So the channel knob is the decision you make to where you want to go, and the the volume knob is how strong that is in your mind of where you want to go. And the contrast is keeping yourself on track. And you have to learn to let go to do that. And I would say the average person probably spends a good 50% of their time focused on things over which they have no control, burning up energy, time, and money trying to control things over which they have no control. So, like I say, if you can control it, take action, get it done, move on. But if you can't, let it go. There's no value in hanging on to it. There's no value in hanging on to a past mistake.
Absolutely.
And you hear it all the time. If this hadn't happened, well, you're still hanging on to that crap, and you got to let it go and move on. It's life. I mean, you pay for everything dearly, either in time or money, and time is way more valuable than money. So it's deciding what you want, taking action, uh, being bold in today's world, and learning to let go and continue moving forward.
Love it. Okay, so for all the listeners, where can we find you? What kind
You
of
can
stuff
go
you got? I know
to
you have two books coming, but I just wanted to say I know you have those two books coming. So do you have like a potential release date that you would like to say to?
No, I don't have release dates for those. I don't plan ahead. They get worked on when I work on priorities. So whatever's a
Okay.
priority today or tomorrow is what I do. And if the book becomes a priority, I'll finish it pretty quick. But about half finished with both of them. But I do have 15 books out there. Um, and you can find some of my stuff on jimbritt.com. That's Britt, jimbritt.com. I also have a online coaching program that is delivered virtually, where you get daily input with video, audio, um, some other programs that go along with it. That's a 4-month program designed to change your relationship toward money. And that's the reason people don't have a lot of it, because they don't have a good relationship with it. So that program is available. The Power of Letting Go is also on there. It's a 32 audio series, about 16 hours total. And guaranteed you listen through that, it will change your life, because you'll see
Absolutely.
things in a whole different light once you finish. And it's all about letting go. Um, and if we have any viewers, listeners out there that want to become an author, if you're a success coach, life coach, executive coach, speaker, entrepreneur, I'm on my 18th volume of a book called Cracking the Rich Code. Um, and you can just message me on my website, or you can send me an email at at my Gmail account, jimbrittcompanies@gmail.com. And if you want information on that, it includes a mastermind and a lot of other cool things with it. With some instructions by people like Les Brown and Mark Victor Hansen and uh, Brian Tracy and Dr. Dennis Waitley and a whole bunch of other experts that we bring in. So it's a pretty cool system we put together to help coaches and speakers primarily to extend their market reach. Um,
Love it.
so happy to chat with anybody about that if they have some experience and like to chat about it. So
Absolutely. So I'll just say if you're an aspiring speaker or you're looking for a coach, I mean, he gave us 45 minutes of value on this. So I just want to let y'all know, like I 100% trust this guy right here. So if there's something that you needed, like this is the guy. Um, so Jim, I want to say thank you, but also I'm going to ask a question personally for me. Is like I just finished and getting ready to release my book.
Mhm.
So exciting of a time for me. How was that for you when you were your first book? Because I know you wrote the second one pretty quick. I was just kind of I wanted to ask that real quick.
Well, most of mine I've written quickly. I've had the first one took me 14 months with somebody else's help and me learning how to type and communicate, which slowed down a lot. And then I had another one that I had to do some research on that took 6 months. But most of my books are written within a 60-day period at least, and they're all 250 to 300 pages or more. The first book is almost 400 pages, um, and that's being converted into a movie script now,
Oh
and
wow, a
and
movie
hopefully
script.
get
Okay,
a movie deal out of that. But
nice.
yeah, the first one was really exciting, um, and I read it so many times, probably 30 times, and I got to the point where I'm just going, I don't even know if this book's any good or not, because you read it so much, trying to find anything wrong with it. I had two editors go through it, And still, you could go through it and find some typo someplace. I mean, it's just the weirdest thing. And somebody told me, just stop editing, stop going through it, just get it published. You've done enough. And so I published it in hardcover myself, self published, and ordered 10,000 copies back then. You couldn't get a deal without that. Didn't realize that's 10 pallets of books, which is a lot of books. And, and then I said to myself, I'm going to sell the paperback rights. I published it on Valentine's Day. By Valentine's Day next year, I'm going to sell the paperback rights. So I had two friends, Bart Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chicken Soup had taken off like crazy back then. And so I gave them both a copy of the hardcover copy of the book. And I said, take this to the publisher and just hand it to them. I didn't know if they would or not. They both said they would, but they get busy and I didn't know. Didn't hear anything like 6 months. And I get a call one day and he said, this is Peter from HCI Publishing. And he said, we do the Chicken Soup series with Jack and Mark. And I said, yeah, Jack and Mark are friends of mine. And he said, um, okay. He says, I just finished reading your book, Rings of Truth. And he said, my entire staff has read it. He said, we have 2 copies here. And he said, I don't know where they came from, but I got 2 copies. He said, we just had our board meeting this morning and we all unanimously voted that this was the best book we've ever read. And we'd like to publish it in paperback and anything else you ever write. And that was a pretty exciting moment because, when they published it on Valentine's Day, a year from when I published the hardcover,
Gotta love
came
those
out on Valentine's
synchronicities.
Day.
Gotta love the
And
synchronicities, right?
yeah, so, self-published, it's exciting to get a book out. There's a lot of them out there today. There's a lot of books being written today. There's some that are really good, some that are okay. But I think it's good that everybody writes a book and get things out of their head on paper, and it's a process worth going through. The average self-published book doesn't sell more than, actually, it sells less than 100 copies. The average self-published book.
Right.
But the process of writing it, and it doesn't mean you're going to sell less than 100 copies. I'm not saying that, but that's the average.
Right.
Told a woman that the other day, and she said she laughed like crazy, and she said, "Yeah, I published mine a year ago." She said, "I've sold 3 copies."
Wow.
So, our book collaboration that we do, that Tony Robbins endorses, and all that, that's a marketing tool. It's not about publishing; it's a marketing and branding and credibility and all of this stuff. So it's a
Yeah.
little different, but it's exciting to write a book and finish it. The last one I finished up, well, actually, I finished 3 almost all at one time. One was What I've Learned from My 6 Sons, which was exciting. And I didn't care if it sold 1,000 copies. I just wanted to have enough to give one to each of my sons, you know. And
Right.
I did that, published it right before Christmas so I could give it to them on Christmas. And I published The Entrepreneur and then Directing the Movies of Your Subconscious Mind. Um, so it's exciting to
Wow.
write a book, yeah. So it's a the word author is derived from the word authority, and so you're an authority when you write a book on whatever
Yeah.
topic it is that you're writing about. And I think that's good to get it out to the world, and it's also a good branding tool for you. It's a good credibility piece because it's not it's not easy to write a book. I mean, it takes time, and
Yeah. It's a lot
some
of
people
blood, sweat,
write
and
faster.
tears, but it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but it's a form of legacy. I feel like it's you
Absolutely.
know. Um, so anyway, I just want to say thank you to the listeners for joining us today. I hope you guys have felt as blessed as I've had to have to share Jim on the platform. Jim, you're more than welcome to come back, and if you have something to promo, you have the new book, whatever, I'd love to have you back anytime. And so I always tell people all the time, like I don't believe in just showing up and being in attendance. I truly believe showing up to being present. And so anyway, hope everyone's having a great day. Thanks a lot. Show up to win.
Right. Thanks so much.